to hop right into this now, considering we have a guest on the line right now. We've just discussed at great length, it's safe to say, for the past couple weeks, months, about the district attorney race here in the city of Philadelphia.
Absolutely. It's definitely been a hot topic due to our current district attorney and due to the fact there's 7 Democratic candidates.
And one Republican.
One Republican for this race.
That kind of fits the number right there. 7 Democrats for every 1 Republican in the city. Look at that. I guess it worked out that way to be true.
That is accurate. Again, obviously, Democrats outnumbering Republicans in the city of Philadelphia. But again, a very important race going on here. And we're nice enough to be joined right now by Tariq El-Shabazz, who is a candidate for district attorney, who's a Democrat running. Tariq, how are you today?
I'm doing well. You're absolutely right. It is raining very, very badly out here, so you may hear the windshield wiping, turning signals, and everything like that. So I'm glad to be here on Rational Radio.
Thank you. We really appreciate.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, we appreciate the time. And again, you're the first guest we've had on that is running for this specific position. So first things first, you announced your candidacy for DA after Seth Williams decided he was not going to run another term. So my question is, how long did it take to decide you wanted to seek this position out?
Well, the problem is I didn't have a lot of time to actually think about it. I had to make the decision rather within, I guess, a 72-hour span because shortly approaching was the petition period. So I had to kind of gather things together, get people together, try to do the things that needed to be done so that I can get a team out to get 8,500 signatures, although I only needed 1,000 to be on the ballot. So 72 hours in terms of actually making the decision. But I think that the decision in terms of the ability to run the office and seeking to do what is necessary in the community is something that was ongoing for my entire 30 years of practice. 5 years I began practice as an assistant district attorney, then for about 2 decades as a defense attorney, and then the last 7 months or so, I was the deputy of special investigations, and the first assistant. And again, I guess all that time I was thinking about it as well, if you will.
And again, you worked under Seth Williams, like you just alluded to, and I watched your press conference in which you talked about your relationship with him and said that, quote, that he is your friend. I don't run and turn my back on friends. So just out of curiosity, with everything that's going on for him deciding not to run for re-election, do you seek out his advice on anything, considering, again, you're seeking an office that he held for a couple years, or for a couple terms, excuse me?
I think that I don't do that for several reasons, but I think the most important reason is I think Seth is at a crossroad in his life where the most important thing to him is battling the allegations that are against him. So for the sake of him doing what he needs to do for himself, his family, and to assist his legal team in defending him, I think that should be his concentration. And my concentration should be going into that office, changing the perception of that office, changing the direction of that office, and doing what is going to be necessary to keep Philadelphians safe and to actually use common sense reform to kind of reform criminal justice that is stark, raving mad right now.
Speaking of criminal justice, you've talked about, you've been quoted before saying that, to say that criminal justice is fair to minorities is inaccurate. Do you have anything to add to that, or how do you feel that you will combat that if you were to be in this position?
I think that it is inaccurate. I think that the numbers show that all over the country. I think that the current president has made it clear that that's going to be consistent. But I think that what we can do to combat that is, in fact, diversify the district attorney's office. The diversity in the district attorney's office is abysmal, if at all it exists. But Philadelphia is a collection of different people, of different cultures, of different faiths, of different races, of different genders, of different sexual orientations. And that should be the representation of the assistant district attorneys in the office. And I don't think enough was done to kind of create that diversity in the office. So the first thing that I'm doing, that I started when I was in the office and I'm going to complete once I get back there in January, is revamping the hiring and recruiting process. I don't think that we have recruited in the right areas. We have tried to make the DA's office reflective of the community that it claims to keep safe. And I think that sending people to different locations, we have graduates from University of Chicago, for example, sending somebody to the University of Chicago Law School, George Washington, Georgetown, sending someone to D.C., me going back to Baltimore. In fact, it is my intention as the district attorney to do some of that recruiting myself so that we can rebuild the trust between the office and the community, and we can actually begin to recruit diversified candidates who are not really loving the district attorney's office and prosecutor's office.
I want to ask you a question, Tariq, about crime in the city of Philadelphia. My cousin, she lives about on 17th Street and Diamond, and there was a shooting last week. A young 16-year-old kid was shot in the hip, and he was transported to the hospital. What are we going to do about crime here in the city? What's your plan to tackle that?
Well, the plan of attack, firstly, is to join with those other stakeholders, that is the public defender, the police department, the judges, the city council, the mayor, to the end of it, and begin to devise a program where we are actually in the community. One of the major problems that the district attorney's office face is getting witnesses to come testify, getting witnesses that trust the district attorney or the prosecutor's office, having people that actually see crimes believe that they're not going to be treated as a criminal, but they are going to be treated as a witness, and they will be able to be safe. People want to feel safe. They want their children to be safe. They want their mothers to be safe. And they want to be safe themselves. But at the same time, they want to be treated fairly. And there's a disconnect between being fair and being just. And that is because we've had a rise of police shootings involving civilians, corruption involving the police department. And although we've had that rise in terms of arrests, in terms of video cameras of these incidents, we don't have a rise in the convictions of those people. So there's a distrust. That distrust is leading to a disconnect. So we can't get the bad guys. We can't get those individuals that are on the street with guns that have no reason whatsoever to be on the street with a gun and shooting at people, or shooting down a block and hitting innocent people. We can't even begin to attack them because people don't trust the DA's office. They don't trust the police. So we don't get the cooperation. So we have to kind of change that narrative. We've got to change the systemic dichotomy and blockage between the community and the prosecutors and law enforcement. And that's something real, man. It's something that is dividing this city into us against them. And if we do that, it will no longer be a city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. It'll be a city of bloody love.
Joining us on WHIP radio right now is Tariq El-Shabazz. He's a candidate for the Philadelphia District Attorney race right now. He's a Democrat in the field with 6 others. Again, a crowded field. It's tough to exactly, separate yourself in that right now. And obviously, you're one of the biggest names out there. So I want to ask you, Mr. Shabazz, that you just talked about the disconnect between the police and citizens here to try to combat gun violence. And I watched your press conference when you announced that you were going to run and seek this office. And you said, I look forward to a strong and productive relationship with Commissioner Ross. So first, can you tell us about your relationship with Commissioner Ross at this current time? And also, did it upset you at all that the FOP endorsed Rich Negra? Now, of course, that's not Commissioner Ross's decision, but I'm just curious, one about Ross and then 2 about the FOP endorsement.
I'm really beginning to love this station and the questions you guys are asking, because they're substantive questions and questions that I enjoy answering. First, Commissioner Ross and I kind of grew up together in law enforcement. When I was in the DA's office, we both were young men going through the ranks of what we've done, and we developed a relationship at that point. Our relationship grew when I became a defense attorney for 2 decades, and he was, in fact, in charge of homicide at one point. And so we would have conversations that led to safe surrender of particular people that are accused or reinvestigating things. He's proven to be a trustworthy individual, a great commissioner that has integrity. And, of course, it heightened and reached this apex when I was the first assistant, because as the first assistant, you deal with the police commissioner a lot. And while I was there, during my tenure there, Police Commissioner Ross and myself were able to begin to attack the police shooting protocol. From the standpoint of the police department, what he began to do is put together a shooting team, which is separated from the Internal Affairs Division. Normally, police shootings were covered by Internal Affairs. But he put together a specific group of individuals whose sole job is just to deal with police shootings with a whole different type of protocol, which was consistent with some of the protocol and changes that I was making in the police shooting protocol for the district attorney's office. So the answer to the question is we have a great relationship. We are actually friends. We We are companions. We are people that talk a lot about what we can do in Philadelphia to make it safer. That's the first thing. With respect to the FOP endorsement, I am not upset in the least bit. I never expected the FOP under the leadership of McNesby to endorse me to even be dog catcher, much less endorse me as the district attorney's office. And no, I'm not disappointed at all. We have to understand that under the current president, there are things that occur in that union, if you will, that are things that are not helping with the disconnect in the community. In fact, it is building more mistrust and distrust and a break in communication between law enforcement and the community than unity, than it should be bringing together. Now, that's not all police. Let's understand that. There are very good men and women that are police officers on a police force. These are people that we don't hear about, though. And the reason why we don't hear about them is because we're too busy dealing with those individuals that aren't good police officers. And we're not dealing with them the way that we should, and we will deal with them better once I become DA. We have to get them, that is the good police officers, to begin to stand up against corruption, to stand up when their brother or sister officer does something that they know to be incorrect. Either stand up to them and address them privately, address them with your supervisors and your superiors, and also come to court when it's time to come to court to pursue those individuals that break the law. And so I never wanted to make it sound, nor will I ever, that the police department is corrupt, because the police department is not corrupt. There are individuals that are in the police ranks that don't do their job correctly, and those are the individuals we have to address. But we have to have, and they should have, a union president who stands up for right despite who the person is that commits the wrong. You can't just support wrong because you say you're a union president.
While your stint working in the DA's office, you mentioned that you were very proud of the accomplishments during your 7 months there. And then you basically also said that Philadelphia's DA's office had one of the most progressive offices in the East Coast. So my question is, how are you going to make it more progressive? And what DA's office do you think is the most progressive on the Eastern Seaboard?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. Well, what I meant in that quote, and I stand by that quote, is that there are programs that are in the office that we began, programs that was in the office prior to my arrival there, and programs that are going to be revamped once I arrive back there, that are based upon common sense reformation of the criminal justice system. For example, diversionary programs. There's a program that a lot of these candidates are talking about to deal with drugs as a health crisis as opposed to a criminal arrestable offense. Well, there are programs there like that SAM program, and those programs have not been dealt with properly because they might have been undermanned. They might have been, as a result of being undermanned, so many cases coming through, they weren't properly done. Or they need to be adjusted and improved so that we can actually treat drug and alcohol addiction as opposed to just looking at it. And we can deal with it from the standpoint of doing things that will decrease mass incarceration instead of doing things that will increase mass incarceration. So I think that was innovative. I think that also one of the changes that were made was to rebring or to reignite, if you will, the municipal court unit by making a municipal court unit. That is the unit that most of the time when people are first hired for the office, that's where they go to. So it's a training ground that you can do. If you train people properly, as young DAs, they will be trained and proper and professional DAs as they get older. You build a camaraderie between the assistant district attorneys there, so they begin to work together. And if they work together, they communicate. And if they communicate, then they can communicate effectively with witnesses, with people that are accused, and with the judiciary. So you got to watch those type of things. Again, that was an innovative way to begin to adjust that. But in mentioning those innovations, I got to also mention that there are things that I thought were bad. There were things that I thought that were behind the time. We began to address the criminal, or I should say conviction review unit, which is a unit that was undermanned, that needs more robust personnel, investigators, attorneys to the end of it. But individuals that have a plan to seek justice as opposed to just review a conviction. And that's important because the district attorney is responsible for justice. It's not responsible for just getting convictions. It's responsible for making intelligent decisions as to whether or not to prosecute someone based upon thorough investigation investigation, not based upon one witness saying a statement and then you go and you're arresting someone and you don't do any further investigation to indicate whether or not the person did it or not. If you do things on that end, that is the front end, you don't got to worry about a conviction review unit because you're taking the time to investigate and to discover whether or not a crime was committed by that individual that you're looking at. And so those are some of the programs there. As on the East Coast, one of the most progressive district attorney's offices, I would have to say it was Brooklyn. Before Brooklyn at this particular point, Brooklyn has the model of conviction review. They have the model of police shooting protocol in terms of how they attack the investigation of these cases, how they attack the prosecution of these cases, how do they attack whether or not a case is taken and could be reversed or not. It was a progressive office and still is, and one that the District Attorney's Office in Philadelphia has spent some time trying to gather as much information from that office and use that information and those particular very beneficial programs into the DA's office. Unfortunately, we're in two different places. Philly is a lot different than Brooklyn, but we have the same problem, so we have to learn how to do that.
All right, Mr. El-Shabazz, I'm sorry, but we have to ask this question.
Absolutely. What question could that
Well, there has been some controversy about the debt that you have in relation to IRS tax liens. I know you've already spoken about this before, but it's definitely something that your competitors will probably try to put against you in your future campaign. Do you have any commentary on that?
I do. They absolutely are going to rely on scandal. You know, I'm waiting for Olivia Pope to come by because that is the only thing they can run. They can't rely on a lack of experience because I have more than each and every one of them. They can't rely on my ability to try a case and to teach because I have more than any of them. And they can't rely on my ability to manage that office because I'm the only one that has done that that's on that panel. But what happened is I am from Brooklyn. However, I've been a businessman and a proud resident of Philadelphia for 2 decades. And as a businessman and a proud businessman, I pay my taxes. But the funny thing about it is that what I also make sure that I do is count every penny and report every penny that I've ever earned as a lawyer. And when I have my accountant look at my books, he looks at our books and then he makes the determination and working the number. And I trust him as to what the taxes are available for me to pay and what deductions I may have. Well, sometimes, as you may know, and if you don't know now, I can assure you you will know, the IRS disagrees with you. And when they disagree with you, there's a dispute as to the amount of taxes or whether or not you can take certain deductions. There are 2 things you can do when the IRS disagrees with you. One, you can fight them and appeal their decision because you think your decision is correct and theirs is wrong, or you can just pay what they tell you to pay. Me, believing that my accountant was accurate, knowing that I tried and to do everything I could do to keep accurate records and pay those things that I need to pay and deduct those things that I need to deduct, I challenged them. And in challenging that, it takes time. Now, when it takes time with the IRS, what that basically means is that penalties and interest accrue. They increase daily. Some may say they increase hourly. It gets to such a point that the penalties and interest cost more than the actual underlying taxes. Well, you know, I'm a tremendous litigator. Unfortunately, I have not beaten the IRS, as you can tell. So as a result, there was a balance based upon audits that came up to $137,000, not $200,000, not anything else other than that. However, at the time of the report came out, almost half of that had already been paid, even though it was a $137,000 lien. The actual taxes that's owed is $74,000, and the $74,000 was in a payment plan being paid and handled. So what happens with the IRS when they put the lien? They put the lien on for what the tax debt is at the time they put the lien on. They don't deduct it or take it down or subtract from that lien to say, well, the lien is not $134,000 no more. The lien is actually, $137,000 no more. The lien is actually $74,000. They don't do that. It will remain $137,000 even if you don't owe that money until the balance is zero. So the actual balance is $74,000. The $74,000 balance, that balance any other bill. It's civil in nature. There's nothing unethical or criminal about it, and it doesn't hamper me in any way, shape, or form for doing the job, the duties, the responsibilities with transparency and integrity of the District Attorney of Philadelphia County.
Last question here for Tariq El-Shabazz, candidate for District Attorney here in the city of Philadelphia. Nice enough to give us time today as he talks about his run for Philadelphia District Attorney. That primary is in the month of May. Again, last question here. Since we're all college students, and again, this is one of the first elections, again, we're voting in. Obviously, we voted in the past presidential election, but something that we know is that voter turnout for primaries such as this get very low. Again, usually it's very low. In 2009 for the Democratic primary here in Philadelphia when Seth Williams was running, what was it? 104,000 votes were casted, and that's only about 12.4% of registered Democrats out of 5 different candidates. Now, Williams won by a hefty margin of 42%, but point being, again, the voter turnout in the Democratic primary for that was only 12.4%. What rate do you think it needs to be for you to get the victory? Because, again, voter turnout, it's very sad to see voter turnout go from, relatively high at the general election in 2016 in November. But then when it comes to these local races, it's a shame that you don't see as many people engaged. So what percentage do you think it needs to be at?
That's a very interesting question. Let me tell you this. First of all, I'm very, very impressed and pleased to be on this radio station with the three of you guys, because it's clear that you guys have done your research. It's clear that you have an understanding of what we're doing, and I appreciate the well-thought-out, intelligent questions. That's difficult because there are 7 people in the Democratic primary, which means that there are people that are going to be pulling from the same voters base, if you will. And so that will lower what the actual amount of or percentage of voter turnout and votes received by each particular candidate in order to be successful. So it's difficult to say that. The only thing that I can say is this. That's why I'm talking to you guys on the radio. That's why I give these interviews. That's why I'm going street to street, neighborhood to neighborhood, community to community, encouraging people to not only come out and vote during the primary, but to ask serious questions about the experience and the ability to run that office of all the people that are running for the office, so that they can make an informed decision. What we have to understand, that the reason why this race is important, or so important, is because we're not going to get any help regarding civil liberties and civil rights from the federal government this time. We're not. I think Donald Trump was clear when he was running. He became even clearer as he became president, and it became the clearest when Jeff Sessions came and became his attorney general, that the federal government is not going to look at just taking care of the civil rights and civil liberties of its citizens. So we're going to have to do that locally. So if we got to do that locally, that means that the district attorney is important in doing that. If you're concerned about safety, the district attorney is important. If you're concerned about drugs and alcohol being treated as a health crisis, the district attorney is important. If you're concerned about the overcrowding prison and the fact that the prison pipeline is alive and well, the district attorney's office is an important office. If you're concerned about rehabilitation, and you're concerned about diversionary programs, and you're concerned about juveniles, and definitely concerned about our senior citizens, the district attorney's office is important. So I encourage people to register before the 15th of this month, so that you can, I would say, register by the 13th of this month so that you can participate in the primary. But participate in the primary, read websites, talk to individuals, go to candidate forums, be well informed, and then, exercise your civil rights and your civil liberties, and that constitutional right you have to be able to vote and put in office somebody who you believe will lead the district attorney's office into the future and not back into the bowels of hell. So I think that we have to think along those lines. I know that it doesn't give you a percentage, and I can give you a hypothetical percentage, but I don't think that benefits us. I think it's more beneficial to kind of encourage people to come out, to encourage people to research, to encourage people to read, and most importantly, encourage people to vote. Thank you guys so much, man, for giving me this opportunity. I hope I made it fruitful for national radio, and I'll submit this to you, that it absolutely is the best college radio station in Philadelphia, and I would submit in Pennsylvania, because it's really rational. You guys take care, and thanks a million.
Thank you very much. That's Tariq El-Shabazz, candidate for Philadelphia District Attorney, joining us on WHIP. I will be at the Millennial Town Hall next week. Hope to see you there as well.
Okay, it's on my schedule with 16 other things.
I'm sure it's a busy time for you. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care now.
Thank you as well. So then, again, there you have it. Tariq El-Shabazz joining us here on WHIP, Philadelphia's #1 college radio station, candidate for Philadelphia District Attorney.